The idea is that Republicans will not believe that Donald Trump did anything wrong. And I'm talking about Republican voters. They won't believe Donald Trump did anything wrong until it is declared in court and he is then punished for it. So it can't just be a judge's opinion. He's got to actually have bad things happen to him legally for the actions he's done. He's got to be imprisoned. If he is treated gently, the impression that Republicans are going to receive is that everything's fine. But you know what? Everything is very much not fine. These are, now I switch to talk about the politicians, these are stochastic terrorists. And they have been allowed to exist as an organization long enough that we now have active, organized terrorist groups in the United States. And they do things like Sam Cedar covered today on the second best show on the internet.
That should guide us.
You got to go with a little bit more nuance with these things than what is the actual numbers.
It's deductive. You got to be deductive instead of trying to use inductive logic to figure this stuff out.
Now, if we're to impose that same century, well, we had a situation where this is Glendale, California, yeah? That
let's look at this footage.
There was a school board meeting. And there were anti-LGBT, I mean, really, a bunch of Proud Boys, it looks like.
Activists. It's unclear to the extent how much of them are actually parents or parents of students.
Well, that's the thing, is that, you know, in every quote that you hear from any of the things that are written about this, it's a parent at the school saying, I appreciate the school for being sensitive to LGBTQ members. And then there's someone, an activist, who's out there, you know, and they got into a fight. Now, you would not measure who's right here by who gets beat up more, right? So,
real quick, remember what I said earlier in the stream. There are more decent people in the world than there are bigots. If you start to get really, really fired up in a moment, which I'll tell you I did, what did Sam Cedar just say? He was talking about the reports. This is a super common thing. What the parents are saying, the actual people with kids in the school, for sure, are saying, I appreciate that there's some LGBTQIA plus whatever the hell, kindness, some basic human decency to other human beings. And because of things like this, it's helpful to learn these things. And then an activist. But if you're a violent activist, as in somebody that tries to get your politics accomplished with violence, there's another word for that. That's called a terrorist. So, it's parents versus terrorists. And the parents are fighting for the right for people to exist. And the terrorists are not.
So here is a footage of a bunch of these Proud Boys going after the parents and supporters of the schools essentially being not hostile to LGBTQ folks.
Jesus.
This is, I think, this
like
must be the yeah. And like they're beating on some moms in some instances. They sprayed pepper spray into a pastor's face.
Brown shirts.
Yeah, that's what's going on there.
And as you can see on some of their shirts, it says like "Leave our kids alone." Also, people like Andy No and like DC Drano and other.
As I recall, Al Qaeda also hid behind children. We were wrong to invade Iraq, but doesn't mean that Al Qaeda ended up being the good guys. It was a war of villains. They hid behind kids too, just like the Proud Boys. Moms for Liberty is no different. That particular organization. That is a tiny group of people. That's a group of I don't know. It's a very small group of people. I think there's only 11 people that are responsible for the vast majority of the book bans we're enduring right now. We need to not put up with this. If you are a school, I don't care if there is a law that says you have to get rid of books when some rando calls you and says it's got a black person, so it makes me feel uncomfortable, and now it's got to go. Your answer to that, I don't care if you lose your job. I don't care if you go to prison. It sucks, I know. It sucks. But your answer to that is no, sir, no, ma'am. You say no. If you're a doctor facing 30 years in prison because somebody comes to your state, to your hospital, for a medically necessary abortion that they could not get in their state, and that state calls you up and says, we need you to provide the records of your treatment of this individual. A trans person comes to your hospital and you provide them treatment, and you get called up by the state saying, we want to harass this trans person, provide us their records. You say no. You got to go to prison, then you go to prison. First, do no harm. If you're a school, first priority, it's the children. It's the gay ones and the straight ones, and it is for both of their benefit that they must learn about the world. Without consequences, this gets worse. But don't let me bring the mood down too much, because that footage was not from today that the Majority Report was playing. What was from today was the news that Donald Trump, the guy who has inspired so much of this evil, his ass is going to court over this. By all accounts, according to the Guardian reporting, according to his own guilty conscience ranting on Truth Social, Steve Bannon, the architect, his ass is going to court. Mark Meadows, a henchman, perhaps the henchman of January 6th, he's taken a plea deal. As in, he had a look at the evidence, and he decided Trump's not going to be able to get away with this. So I'm going to protect myself. The advantage that we have, and by we I mean decent human beings, the advantage we have is that we truly believe. And I hear all the time about MAGA true believers. I don't believe it. Haven't met one yet that I've been convinced by, that they truly believe. I've seen people that have faith in MAGA, but not belief. And whether or not I'm right about the followers, the fact is, I think we both know that Trump does not truly believe. To him, reality doesn't matter. To Steve Bannon, you think he really believes this stuff? Of course not. If he really believed it, why is he lying? The advantage we have is that we truly believe. And we are going to keep fighting for decency. We are not going to allow, there's no scenario where we'll say, well, I've had enough. I'm just not going to say that gay people are allowed to live anymore. No scenario where that happens. I've had enough. I'm not going to stick up for black folks anymore. No. If it comes down to it, decent people will go to the bitter end. And all of this is to ensure that we don't have to. We're winning. It's an ugly fight. No doubt about it. Shouldn't have been this close. It shouldn't even have been necessary in this century. But we are winning.